Today I'm going to talk to you a little about heredity and genetics, why we look the way we do. How can we predict what our offspring will look like? To do this, we need to know and understand some key terminology. If you'll repeat after me, please. Heredity.
Heredity.
Trait.
Trait.
Mendelian genetics.
Mendelian genetics.
Dominant trait.
Dominant trait.
Recessive trait.
Recessive trait.
Genes.
Genes.
Allele.
Allele.
Chromosome.
Chromosome.
Homogeneous.
Homogeneous.
Heterogeneous.
Heterogeneous.
Phenotype.
Phenotype.
Genotype.
Genotype.
Homozygous dominant.
Homozygous dominant.
Homozygous recessive.
Homozygous recessive.
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous.
And Punnett square.
And Punnett square.
What is heredity? Heredity is the passing on of traits from one generation to the next. What is a trait? A trait is a specific characteristic that is unique. Traits affect the way we look, they affect how our bodies function, and our traits are inherited. And some examples are hair color, our eye color, our handedness, whether we're left-handed or right-handed. Can you think of any more examples?
One could be how tall you are and how big your feet and hands might be.
Right? Those are good examples. What is Mendelian genetics? Gregor Mendel was a monk who lived in the late 19th century, and through studying peas, he developed the basis for the science of genetics, which is we are still using today. He studied peas. So let's look at the plants. How many traits? Purple blooms, purple bloom, purple bloom, purple bloom, white bloom. Green pea, yellow pea, green pea, green pea, green pea. So purple bloom, green pea, yellow pea, and a white bloom. That means there are 4 different traits expressed. What kind of traits are there? Traits are either dominant or recessive. So what do these terms mean? Do you know what dominant means?
The stronger trait that'll show through more often.
And do you know what recessive means?
The trait that's don't show through as often as the dominant one.
That's correct. Let's make sure. The dominant trait is a trait that is always expressed or shown. Examples are brown hair, brown eyes, and right-handed. Do you know any other dominant traits?
As I said earlier, how tall you could be, what makes your eye color is different depending on the person and your parents of dominant
Well,
traits.
brown hair and brown eyes are usually dominant over blue eyes and blonde hair. But those are good examples. A recessive trait is a trait that is covered up or seems to disappear, like blonde hair, blue eyes, and left-handed. Where do traits come from? Factors that make up an individual come from both parents. The trait information is passed on from generation to generation in the form of genes. Where do genes come from? An individual needs 2 genes for each trait, 1 gene from each parent. This gene paired together is called an allele. 1 gene comes from the sperm cell of the father, and 1 gene comes from the egg cell from the mother. How do genes get their information? A chromosome is a structure in the cell that contains the genetic information, and this information is passed on from one generation to the next generation. How are genes expressed? Traits are how our genes show, and since traits are formed from 2 genes, they are described by the combination of genes that make the pair. Traits are described as either homogeneous, which homo means same, or pure, and the prefix homo means same, so both big letters or both small letters. Heterogeneous, the prefix hetero means different, so these would be like a big B and a little b. What is a phenotype? Phenotype is the way we look or appear. Think of it as physical features, so physical. An example would be brown eyes, blonde hair, tall, short. What is a genotype? Genotype is the genetic makeup for a trait. We use letters to represent genotypes. For example, homozygous brown. Homo means
Same.
So it's big B, big B. So it's pure brown. Both genes are the same. Hetero,
Different.
big B, little b. It means it has one of a capital letter and a lowercase letter. Homozygous dominant trait. For an example, homo means
Same.
dominant means,
Capital letters.
so it would be expressed as
Big B, big B.
homo,
Same.
recessive,
Sure. Lowercase letters.
so it would be
Small b, small b.
hetero means,
Different.
so
Big B, little b.
that's right. So how do we predict offspring using what we know? A Punnett square is a way to show the possible combination of genes that offspring of parents could have. So this is a Punnett square. It consists of 4 squares, and then over top we're going to put the father's gene makeup and the mother's. So for right-handed parents, 2 dominant and 1 recessive. Big R, big R, big R, little r. And then we're just going to cross them.
Big R, big R. Big R, big R. Or little r would be big R, little r. Big R would be big R, big R. Little r, big R would be big R, little r.
That's right. So if we come up with 4 dominant genes, that means there's a 100% chance probability that they will be right-handed. The genotypes are 50% homo, which means
Same.
right.
Big R, big R.
There's a 50% chance that there would be hetero, which is what?
Different. Right. There's 0%
And then
chance that it will be homozygous left.
Homozygous left. We're going to do the same with height over here.
Big T, big T, big T, big T, little t, big T, big T, little t, little t, little t.
Right.
Would be little t, little t.
So there's a 25% is going to be, the child would be homozygous tall, which homo means
Same.
there's a 50% chance it would be hetero, which means,
Different.
and a 25% chance it would be homozygous short. What does homo mean?
Same.
So, dominant, heterozygous, recessive. There's a 50% chance that it would be heterozygous tall, which translates to a 75% chance that they would be tall and a 25% chance they'd be short. Our next example is eye color, and this is for blue-eyed parents. Both of them have the recessive genes for blue eyes. So we're going to put the BB here and the little b here. And then we're going to cross them.
Little b, 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 little b.
Right, that's correct. So the phenotype would be 100% blue eyes. The genotype would be 100% blue eyes.
Nice.
Homozygous recessive is,
Blue.
okay, for this trait we're going to do handedness. Pure right and pure left-handed parents. One is right-handed and the other one's left. So we're going to cross them. Big R,
Big R, little r. Big R, little r. Little r, big R. Little r, big R. Big R, little r, big R.
okay. So there's a 100% probability that the child will be right-handed. There's a 100% probability that it would be heterozygous right-handed. So now that we know and understand the terminology and we've looked at the Punnett square, we're going to do. So on this one we're going to do an eye color. Brown eyes is heterozygous.
Different.
So it's different. So it's going to be demonstrated or shown as big B, little b. And then blue eyes, which is homozygous recessive. Homo means?
Same.
And recessive?
Means lowercase.
Lowercase. So we're going to do big B, little b, little b, little b. So in this instance, we're going to put the big B, little b on the top. Big B, little b. Just imagine, if you will. And then we're going to cross them. Big B, big B, little b. Little b, little b. Little b, big B, little b, little b.
Little b.
Big B, little b,
little b.
little b. On our trait, it's going to be height for a tall parent, and it's going to be homozygous dominant. Homo means
Same.
dominant.
Big letters.
So what are the letters going to be? Big R.
Big R, big R.
And a short parent, which was homozygous recessive. Homo means
Same.
recessive.
Lowercase r.
So let's see if we were correct. So out of 4 chances, the probability that you would have a child with brown eyes is 2 out of 4, or a 50% chance. And blue eyes, 2 out of 4, which is a 50% chance. So it could go either way. For height, out of 4 chances, the probability that you would have a child with brown eyes is 2 out of 4, or 50%. And blue eyes is 2 out of 4, which is 50%. So now that we know and understand our terminology, let's go over them one more time. Heredity.
Heredity.
Trait.
Trait.
Mendelian genetics.
Mendelian genetics.
Dominant trait.
Dominant trait.
How do you express that? Dominant.
As capital letters.
Capital letters. What about recessive trait?
Lowercase letters.
Lowercase letter. Genes.
Genes.
Allele.
Allele.
Chromosome.
Chromosome.
Homogeneous. Homo
Homogeneous.
means what?
Same.
Heterogeneous. Hetero means what?
Different.
Phenotype.
Phenotype.
What is pheno?
Physical.
The physical. Genotype.
Genotype.
Just for
Homozygous dominant. Homozygous recessive.
heterozygous. And Punnett square. Now we can predict our offspring. Now I have a video, and it's going to review what we just went over, but it will also have some little test questions in there, see if you were listening. A little technical difficulty.
Just a little bit.
Just a little. Here
There
we
we
go.
go.
So
give you the
I have a
mouse.
confession to make. For my classroom, I always wanted a hairless guinea pig. They sell them at some pet stores, but they can be really hard to find. And while I doubt they do so well in the wild, their genetics are fascinating. And so are guinea pigs. We spend quite some time on LOL cats, but we'd spend even more time if someone would make a funny guinea pig site. Most guinea pigs have hair. This is because of their DNA. DNA makes up genes, and the guinea pigs received genes from both their mother and their father. An allele is a form of a gene and often represented by a letter. In this case, we'll use the letter H for hair. A hairless guinea pig has 2 recessive alleles for the trait of having or not having hair.
Okay, so what do we call different forms of a gene? Is it letters, traits, or alleles?
Alleles.
We're going to see if you're right on the next one. You were correct. It's alleles.
A recessive allele is usually represented by a lowercase letter, or allele. By recessive, it means that the allele will not usually show up. The only way it will show up is if there is no dominant allele present. A dominant allele is represented by a capital letter, and it's an allele that will show up. Think of it as dominating.
So which allele or gene shows up only when paired with another? The dominant or the recessive?
Recessive.
Recessive. Let's see if you're right. Which type of letter is used to represent a recessive?
A lowercase letter.
That's right. You said recessive? You were correct. You said lowercase and you were correct.
Dominating. So a hairless guinea pig does not have a dominant allele for hair, and that's why the recessive trait, not having hair, shows up. A hairless guinea pig's genotype, that's the genetic makeup of an organism, can be represented as a lowercase h. A guinea pig that does have hair can be represented as a big H, or a big H. See, it only takes one dominant allele, a capital H, for a trait to show up. That dominating allele means that the recessive allele is hidden.
So which two genotypes would cause a guinea pig to have hair?
Big H, little h, and big H, big H.
Right.
If I can get it.
So which genotype would result in a hairless guinea pig?
Small h.
Right, the recessive. Your answers were correct on that one. And they were right on this one too. Good job.
Now, we're not quite done with the vocab here. A genotype of big H, or little h, is considered homozygous. The root in this word means same, and they are the same case. Big H, those are both capital letters, and little h, those are both lowercase letters. So big H is called homozygous dominant because of the capitals, and little h is homozygous recessive because of the lowercase. A genotype of big H is considered heterozygous. The root in this word means different because their letters are different cases. One is a capital and one is a lowercase. If I were to show you a guinea pig with hair,
So which genotype is heterozygous? What does hetero mean?
Different. It'd be this one.
We're correct.
hair, would you know its genotype? Well, you would know it's not little h, because if it was little h, then it would be hairless. But remember, a guinea pig with hair, it could be big H, or big H. We don't really know. We could do a test cross to eventually determine this, but you can't tell just by looking at the guinea pig. Now, if we had a hairless guinea pig, we do know for sure that it's little h, because if it did have a capital letter, even one, that dominating allele would take over and it would have hair. So let's try.
So true or false? You can tell if a guinea pig with hair is homozygous or heterozygous by their appearance.
False.
You were right.
Try a monohybrid cross. The root mono means one because it focuses on one trait, in this case, hair. And that means a Punnett square would need to be created like this with 4 squares. In our cross, we are going to cross 2 heterozygous guinea pigs. So let's look at this in steps. Step 1, first, figure out the genotypes of the parents. Heterozygous means big H, little h. Step 2, place one parent along the top of the Punnett square, outside of the boxes like this, and place the other parent along the left side of the square, outside of the boxes like this. Step 3, cross them. For formatting purposes, we always put the capital letter first. The results that you get in the squares would be the offspring, the babies. Now, if I were to ask you the genotypes of the babies, you could list them out.
So where would you find the genotypes of the offspring or babies? Inside these squares or on the outside?
Inside the smaller squares.
That's correct. Let's check your answer. Inside the smaller.
1 big H, 2 big H, and 1 little h. I could even turn that into a genotype ratio of 1 homozygous dominant to 2 heterozygous to 1 homozygous recessive. Or a percentage. 25% are homozygous dominant, 50% are heterozygous, and 25% are homozygous recessive. Well, what if I asked about...
This is just a side note. Remember, 1 out of 4 would be the same as 1/4 or 25%, and 2 out of the 4 would be the same as 1/2 or 50%.
What if I asked about the phenotypes? What does that mean? I like to think that pheno sounds like physical. So the phenotype would be the physical traits of that organism. And in this example, it's whether they have hair or not. Now remember, any babies that have a capital H have a dominating allele, and they will have hair. So the babies that are big H, or big H, little h, they have hair. So 3 of them here, the 1 big H baby and the 2 big H, little h babies, they all have hair. The homozygous recessive baby, which was little h, that baby has no dominant allele present. So this little guy would be hairless. So you could say the phenotype ratio is 3 have hair to 1 that's hairless. Or a phenotype percentage could be 75% hair, 25% hairless.
So what percentage of the babies will not have hair, which means they're hairless?
25%.
That's
Or
right.
even.
One thing to emphasize about Punnett squares is that they are predictions. These are probabilities. This means it's not necessarily exactly what you're going to get. For example, it's a probability that a child has a 50-50 chance of being born a boy or a girl. But we all know families that only have children that are girls, or families that only have children that are boys. Probabilities are predictions. Another reason to love biology, it's exciting. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
So are Punnett square percentages always correct? No.
No. We
It's
don't
just a
make
prediction. It's kind of a, it's like an educated guess. So that's all for our lesson today on heredity and genetics. Do you have any questions?
No.
Well, I thank you so much for your time and attention.